I'm Matt Reynolds, and this is my podcast.
I can do the job, but running the business is quite difficult. What a lot of tradesmen lack, and I was probably one of them, is business skills.
I don't mind making mistakes. You learn from your mistakes.
Information is all around you in the minds of people that work beside you.
Welcome back to the Trench Talk podcast. I'm Matt Reynolds. I'm a plumber, and this week I sat down with Dave Bradley. The idea of these discussions, for those of you joining us for the first time, is to go into the trenches of achievement and talk, not with people who are orchestrating from some lofty perspective, but to those high performers who are actually in the trenches, honing their craft. That's included guests from the worlds of business, sport and entertainment, all of whom are on the front lines doing amazing things. This particular episode is all about property development. Dave began his property investing career in Ballarat with his then business partner Steve McKnight, a former Trench Talk guest. As accountants, they accumulated hundreds of positive cash-flowing rental homes and apartment blocks in their quest to replace their accounting income. Today, Dave's focus is property development. His current system for growing his own wealth includes holding close to zero rental properties. We talked about his change in strategy and how he's now using land subdivision and townhouse development to make money faster. I really enjoyed this one. Dave's a straight shooter and tells it exactly as it is. We also covered evaluating risk, being lazy and outsourcing, raising capital, how to find development deals to purchase, and much, much more. If you'd like to know more about Dave, you can find him at bradleypropertygroup.com.au. To get every episode of Trench Talk, please remember to hit the subscribe button inside your chosen podcast player. Enjoy my chat with Dave Bradley. Dave Bradley, thanks for doing this. We're in your office this morning. Thanks for inviting me in and having me in. Now, can we start with a snapshot of what you're doing today and where you are in terms of your property journey?
Sure. First of all, it's great to be here, and hopefully over the next little while I can give you something that is of use to you and your listeners that's there. So currently I run a development company. I started off as an accountant and started off buying little houses and used to keep them just as rentals. And then eventually one day one of them needed to get renovated. So I learned how to renovate. And I figured out that wasn't much fun because it needed my hands to get dirty, and I realised that I wasn't very, very good at it, was the case.
We're actually hands-on you're talking about?
The first one, we did a hands-on renovation.
Okay.
And then I guess over a podcast you can't see how soft these hands are, but these are soft hands.
No, they look pretty soft. I can tell from you.
And they're not dishwashing hands, they're just soft. They're office hands. So I figured out that renovations wasn't a way to go, and so I had a lot of rental properties, and eventually one was beyond repair, so I think I cut off a backyard, and I figured out the amount of money I made from a backyard was I went, no, it's a fairly decent chunk. So then I started looking for backyards, and I started looking for sites I could develop, and one thing came to another, and here I am today. So today, what do? I typically do a number of two main things, one of which is townhouse developments, which I think most people would be fairly familiar with and might actually live in the type of end product, or they would at least might even be doing it themselves. So I take an old rundown house, or not so rundown house, and try and make it into 2, 3, 4, 5 dwellings on the same block of land. So typical townhouse developments. And the other thing that I do is a land subdivision. We'll go and get some land, and we'll, instead of actually building the houses, we'll just actually cut the land up into multiple things, and then people will go and buy the land and go and build their own home with a volume builder or a builder of their choice, and get into the great Australian dream.
And that house originally, one of your rentals needed to be renovated, so you renovated that. But why did you look to do more of that building work? Why not renovate that and then just keep on with your, I suppose, like a cash flow model originally? There's more money in doing those bigger projects, or how did that work?
Well, I think when we did the renovation project, and you sort of look back, and one of the things I do in every project even now is I at the end of the project look back and see what are all the things that I did well and what are all the things I did poorly, and how can I improve that. So I'm one for continual improvement and trying to see patterns, or as I call it when I go with my running buddies and go for a run, is read the tea leaves in that sense, because everyone gets the tea leaves. How are they reading the tea leaves? And so what I came to the conclusion of was, firstly, I actually didn't like it. This notion, I watched the renovation shows, or I used to watch the renovation shows, and the romance of someone out there, and that just wasn't my reality. It looked like bloody hard work, and not that enjoyable work, and being dirty. And then I came to the conclusion really quickly that I was much better at putting a deal together than I wasn't actually working on the tools. So I sort of liken it to, if I was there painting a wall, then the whole market was behind me, and I was looking at this wall, making sure that the paint was the right or whatever was the case. But the market was going on behind me, and I could make more money whilst being in the market than I could by painting the wall. So one of my theories is that now what I try and do is as little as possible. And what I found, especially getting started, even more so now, is that people will do anything for you. Like you can pay someone to do pretty much anything you want, whether it's clean your house or get your groceries or mow your own lawn. I don't do any of that stuff. People will do it for you.
Yeah.
So you need to pay them,
of course,
for it. Nothing's free, and I don't expect to get it for free, but it frees up my time to allow me to go and do things that I'm better at, that are going to create more money for me. So when I went through the first project, we did it and we learned some stuff, and I think you need to do that to actually have an understanding of A, what you're good at and what you're not good at, and B, when someone gives you a quote to say, I want to paint your wall and it's going to cost you $100, you have an appreciation of, is that the price or is it not the price? You're getting ripped off. It's appreciation of $1 and how it goes. But then I think you have to graduate from that to go, how can I do this? Because how do you improve on painting one wall? Painting 2 walls, painting 3 walls, painting 4 walls? What do you do? Or is your improvement that you're painting no walls? You have people painting the walls for you.
Which is a track that you've gone down.
And that's where I got to. So I'm big on leverage, which comes through that, and I'm about how do I make money out of property. So when people come to me today and say, what do you actually do? What I do is my mode and my business plan, I have a fairly succinct goals, which you probably won't have time to go into over the course of this interview. But I'm looking at a piece of property and I'm saying, how can I make an earn out of this piece of property? And nowhere in that does it say where I can do the work.
Yeah,
for doing that.
Yeah.
The people that I know over the journey who've gone down that road, at the end of the time, they may have bought a house, renovated it, whatever they've done, and made a bunch of money out of it. They might have I made $80,000 in a 6-month period, whatever. And I don't have any opinion of whether that's a good amount of money or a poor amount of money. But what I do say is that every single time I've talked to a person about that, they discount their labour rate down to zero.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's often missed. Yeah, particularly by tradesmen.
There you go. And you coming from that background, you know more of that people in that background. So they say, I made that amount of money. So what I encourage people to do is to say, so if you did that process and you made 80 grand, like celebrate the fact you made 80 grand in 6 months. That's like you should be high-fiving because that's a thing to be celebrated. But as I said to you just before that, I then look back and say, and I sort of try and critique how well I did. So I would try and break down how I made the 80 grand. Was some of it my free labour? Was some of it the market? Was some of it my actual multiplication or a return on my renovation dollar? Where did the money come from? Or did I just get lucky? And so even now, I'll do a development and there are times when I just got lucky. The market moved and they got lucky. Now, take it, because there's equal times when the market went against you or the market didn't move for you and you went, oh, geez, I wish I'd have done that. So you take it.
Yeah.
So if you made $80,000 in a renovation, you can go, high-fiving everyone you know and, I'm the best thing there's ever been and I'm going to, or you can go, oh, geez, I got lucky there. That's okay. But recognise that for the next time to say, how can you do it better?
So, you pioneered famously, could you say that?
They're your words, not mine, mate.
Yeah, no, I understand. The cash flow positive model way back when you started in Ballarat back in the day. But now you've moved over to this development model, which are two fundamentally different ways of making money out of property. Yep. So was there specific reasons that you moved from one to the other? Because you could put deals together in both ways, right? I mean, you can, quote, sit in an office and find those properties and buy them and rent them out, or you can you've got plans sitting here and there's drawings on the board and you can put that together from an office. So your skill is putting it together, but why one fundamentally different strategy over the other? Or was it changed would be a better question.
Yeah. Well, you should come for a run with me because I was discussing this on my Sunday run with one of my buddies about 15 k's in.
It might be hard to record with all the huffing and puffing that probably goes on. But
see how your extension cord goes for that one. So I think at the start a number of things. You only know what you don't know what you don't know at the start. And so when we first got started, and when I talk about the we, I'm talking about Steve and I when we first got going, is that we didn't have bucket loads of capital. We didn't have positions. We had to have we could buy properties, but we needed assistance, and that assistance was in positive cash flow. And so,
what age were you? Sorry to jump in. Around that time.
29, I think.
When you first started?
Yeah. So, not that old, but old.
Yeah.
Like enough where I'd done enough where you had a little bit of an idea, but I wouldn't say I had oodles and oodles of experience and that sort of stuff around that time. So we went to pricing points where we could get into the market, which meant by definition these properties were more likely to be cash flow. When, as you said, we pioneered it. I think what people have always said pioneered it. I think we brought it out of people's subconscious into their conscious, and we would buy a lot of these type of properties on almost a daily or a weekly basis. Of just kept going and going and going because they were there, and our goal at the time was really clear, was a cash flow goal, because that was our way of being able to then get ourselves time in the market. Because right now, one of the biggest things that holds people back is their time, because they have a job to get to. Having said that, one of the biggest advantages that people look for cash flow. People already have cash flow. It's called a job. We were self-employed. We didn't have that luxury of a job. We just started an accounting practice, and so we didn't have a day's annual leave. We could have had a week's annual leave, but we weren't getting paid for it. It was time off without pay, but you needed to get paid. So our start, from my perspective, going for cheap and cheerful cash flow positive properties was out of necessity, because that's how we needed to go. But to try and answer your question, there was a specific moment where things changed, and I remember it like it was yesterday being the case. And so it was about 2001, and I remember it because it was the birth of my second child, and I missed because I was buying properties.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I bought 3 blocks of flats, and I bought 3 blocks of flats in Tasmania, and I paid something like, I don't know exactly what I paid $640,000 for them. I remember the numbers really well. Remember, I'm the accountant, I can remember numbers.
For all 3?
For all 3 blocks of flats.
Yep.
And they were returning about $100,000 a year in cash flow. And I was chatting with a buddy of mine, and I said, this stuff's going to be worth $1 million. He says, mate, it's Tasmania. The capital growth has been flat forever. They're worth what you paid for them. And I said, I disagree. Anyway, so I said, I reckon they're worth more. Chat to Steve, and he goes, no, we don't sell. And so I went to market, and we had a fairly robust discussion about whether you should sell, or you should lose that cash flow of the rent of $100,000 and all that sort of stuff. I went to market, and I sold them for a little under $1.2 million.
So you
in about 18 months.
You doubled your money in 18
months. I did more than
plus.
double my money, because that was ignoring leverage. Because I had leverage involved, my money went from, it would have multiplied by 4-fold or something like that in that case. And so that was about an 18-month period. So what I'd said to my recollection, or my justification to Steve to sell it to the other director, if you like, was to say, just look at it like we're getting 30 years worth of cash flow in one day.
Ah, I've never heard of it explained that way. Interesting, yeah, okay.
And so what it did is, I remember the numbers, I had about $200,000 in this deal, and I borrowed about $440,000, and I walked away with, I think, $700,000 or something like that. And what it allowed me to do was I turned 200 into 700 in 18 months.
Yep.
Now, some people are going to listen to this, go, oh yeah, well played, the rich get richer, well, good on you, Dave, there you go. But no, that's what happened. Yep. The realisation was that I went, if my yield, doesn't matter what return I get on my assets, if I can keep turning 200 into 700 and 700 into 1 point, and so on and so forth, it doesn't matter what my yield is. So if you looked at it in a really, really, really basic sense, people understand yield and return on investment generally.
Yes.
So if a person says, I want to get a 10% return on my money, let's come back a different way. Most seminars I ever spoke at have been to, most people want to earn a passive income of $100,000 a year. It seemed to be like 9 out of 10 seminar participants say it's there. If you needed $100,000 as your income goal, and you could make a 10% return on your money, you'd need $1 million of assets. Fairly simple mathematics in the case. And so if that would make you 10%. If you had 500,000, the numbers would go accordingly as you went through the numbers.
Of course.
So people would focus on their cash flow goal. They would focus on, I needed $100,000. What I discovered around that time was, the cash flow will take care of itself. So the numerator, to go back to your year 9 maths,
yes,
will take care of itself, provided you take care of the denominator. So if your denominator is so big, it doesn't matter what rate of return you're going to get on your assets, you'll actually achieve your goal. So most people are focusing on the cash flow, and my transition away from that was I started focusing on my net worth or my net assets or the denominator rather than the numerator or the positive cash flow effect. Does that make sense?
So what you're saying is that if you have enough assets, the cash flow will take care of itself.
Yeah. And I had this transaction where I went, wow, I've just made a truckload of money in a short period of time, and I reckon I can replicate it. So if I keep doing that and that and that and that and that, the actual cash flow that I walk away with from rental streams or whatever else will take care of itself because I can make 200 into 700.
So even though you actively had to do that time and time again, because when you're looking for passive income, you want that, as you said, $100,000 a year coming in, but you don't want to have to do anything for it, right? Whereas you weren't worried about actively doing it if you could build your asset base at this faster rate.
Correct. And so when I build, and so what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to build my asset base at a faster rate. So I'm taking a house. Let's call it I pay for $1 million. It doesn't matter what I pay for it, and I'm trying to turn it into 3 houses. So I'm trying to turn my capital in that house into a multiple of that capital in that house.
Now, I either read or heard, and don't ask me where because I can't remember, that you actually don't hold. So you've gone from holding at one point hundreds of properties to now you don't have any rentals.
I have a couple,
or very few.
I have a couple of rentals, but mainly the rentals are there waiting for planning. The property's waiting for planning permits to come through.
So that's just making money because of the circumstances or taking advantage of it.
And again, a separate podcast about the rental laws and about the rights that they have versus the returns that you actually get. You can see why people would go with the amount of rubbish you've got to put up with from either rental agents or tenants.
Yes.
This is not a poor landlord story. This is just the practicalities of what happens that you go, I can see why people just don't do that. So you're correct, man. I have a couple, but nothing that I would say is for the long term there. So when I'm working on a daily basis, I'm working towards my end game.
Your end game, I'm thinking, at some point has to turn back into that cash flow model, doesn't
Correct. It does do. But right now, so if let's say I've got $100,000 of capital that I can go and place in the market.
Yep.
So I've got a number of choices. I can go and put it into what I call an active asset, or I can go and develop a property, and I can multiply it at a rate and make a return of whatever I can make in that. Or I can go and buy a rental property. And so right now, I say the amount of money I can make from an active asset versus a passive asset is more in the active asset. So I'm better off putting it into a property development, doing the development, coming out with a bigger pot of capital, my denominator, and eventually when I get closer to my end game, I will go, you know what, I'll just go and buy passive assets and sit there if my denominator is so big, my net asset base is so big.
Because you have traded up all your assets, you're going to have a bigger cash flow,
Correct.
so you win in the end.
Correct.
In terms of risk between the two strategies, is it riskier to go with this development model in your opinion or not?
I say it's not. It's a really good question. I say it's not because I think I'm in control of my own destiny. So I'm comfortable with the risk that I'm taking on that's there. For other people, they might. So risk is, one of these funny things about what is risk. And so I say when people invest in my projects that we're trying to actually minimise the risk all the time. So what we're trying to do is get a rate of return adjusted for the risk that we're taking on. And everything you do has a risk associated. So in a development, you will have a finance risk, a development risk, a settlement risk, a building. There's all these risks that you actually have. And so you're actually getting paid to take on those risks as opposed to just buying a property and putting a tenant in. Now, the thing is, it's okay to take the risk. I think you need to, A, understand what the risk is and what the risk can do to you, and B, then go and manage that risk and have a plan for that risk. So when people say it's risky, or is it risky, Dave? It must be risky for you, or a comment thereof. What they're saying is, that sounds risky to me. I don't know how to manage the risk. Where I'm saying, no, I actually understand what the risk is, and I'm going to do my utmost to actually minimise that risk, or at least recognise it and have a plan for if something was to happen, and I have to actually then enforce risk minimisation.
So you've obviously considered it and comfortable with it, and hence you're doing what you're doing.
Correct.
Can we get into some of the specifics about developing? How do you decide what to develop? Like if you've got a few different sort of things that you do with land and townhouse and that, is there one thing that you chase specifically? Like is it the land? Do you buy with development plans already approved? How do you?
Sure. The wide-ranging thing we're trying to do at this, or at the start, I'm just trying to make a buck out of property.
Yep.
That's what we're looking at. Yep. So I have so the first thing you look at talking about risk, I have acute awareness of A, what the finance thing is in place, and B, how much capital that I have. Because one of the risks is doing, if I was to go and buy a property tomorrow, I want to know how much capital I have in my check account right now to write a check for it. I want to know how much I've got in 90 days' time, or whenever the settlement is. because the first risk you're going to have is if you can't actually take the vendor out of play, you're going to have a risk because whatever you're in default of contracts, and with that comes consequence. So the first issue I'll have is, what is my capital capability? How much capital do I have, and how much can I get my hands on with? And that goes intertwines with the amount of leverage, the amount of debt that a bank will actually let you have. Coming sideways, then I also try and overlay that with how much projects. I realise that's not very good English. How many projects? Yes. Maybe better. I'm a numbers guy, not a words guy. How many projects can I do and do well at the same point in time? So I reckon for me, and you're in my palatial offices right now, and the grandeur and the staff running around everywhere. Yeah. It's just me and one staff person, so there's not a lot of us. I outsource a lot of things. How many projects can I do at a point in time? And I reckon I've got a number. I reckon that number is, and I reckon it's anywhere from 10 to 15 projects, depending upon the type of projects that I can deal with in my mind, and the team can deal with, which is Sarah and the rest of the people there. We can comfortably handle without causing ourselves too much problem. So if I go beyond that, I've just increased the risk.
Because you put time pressures on yourself.
Well, I can only be one place at once. I've got more leverage. I've got more capital. I might have more investors. I've got more buildings to worry about. There's stuff that becomes out there. So as far as then, how do I establish the type of project? The first thing is to work out is what type of projects can I do and how many projects can I do. Then I try and ideally, if I was doing 10 projects, you don't want 10 projects all sitting at council waiting planning approval, nor do you want 10 projects all on the market at the same time, nor do you want 10 projects all at construction at the same time. You sort of want them in every, that they're all in different phases at the same time, so they're all progressing, doing their own pace. So a different way, if you're going to buy 12 projects in a year, you'd buy one a month.
Makes sense, yeah.
So in that sense. So then when it comes to it works out, it's a continual, I guess, discussion or a feedback about where we're actually at to work out what type of projects are you actually looking for. And so to try and answer your question, give you something, I'm not trying to avoid it. No. So the first thing I look at is the area. Okay. So I will stay in the area close to home. So I'm based in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, and I'll look for projects in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. Now, thankfully for me, it's been an absolute goldmine. Like, the market has gone absolutely gangbusters. It's a solid area. It's got high demand for the finished product, and if you follow some simple rules and give the market what it wants is the main one, you'll be okay. Having said against that, the market's had an unbelievable price escalation. So I try and buy something today and I compare it to what it was like 12, 18 months, 2 years ago, then I've got to get my head around real quickly that the market has moved. So there's different things that your head goes to. So the first thing is the area. I'm saying close to home. Why? It's because I know the market and I don't have to drive too far. That's there. Before I buy any project, I want to make sure I can get in. I also want to make sure I can get out. So for me to get out, what do I need to do? I need to make sure that I've got a real estate agent in the area that I know I can use. I know I've got a builders that I can use. I know I can get finance. And I know I've got investors if I need, or I've got my own money if I need. I want to make sure all it's all taken care of. And the last thing would be, what type of property am I actually trying to get? One with plans already approved or not? And that will fit into the workflow or the deal flow that I'm currently experiencing. So,
in an overall sense, depending on where your other projects are and where you need to fit.
Yeah, okay. But then what happens? So then you go, well, how do you find projects? Because, again, I don't know where your questions are going, but I suspect we'll be on there somewhere about how do you find projects.
You've picked the next one.
and this is where everyone goes, you can't tell where to find. It's really simple. I'm fairly unique in some of the things that I do. So I go to some agents, and you can write this stuff down, and I go, hey, Matt, you're a real estate agent. You get paid to sell stuff. I'm after a property, please.
Yep.
They say, what are you after? Well, I'm after 1,000 square metres of land. I'm after this. I'm after that. I tell you exactly what I'm after.
Yep.
And they go, right. So I've heard of people say, you should go and knock on doors. You should go to approach neighbours directly. No, I just go to a real estate agent. One of my rules is I don't like to buy properties at auction, just because I think that I've got 4 young children at home, so I like to spend time in their lives on a Saturday versus going to auction. And as I've said from the stage a couple of times, Saturdays we have ballet and netball and basketball, and of course, the kids have got their activities as well.
Yeah. No, I understand perfectly. So you approach real estate agents, and then they contact you when the deal comes.
Dave, I've got one for you. And so it might be off market, it might be on market, mainly the case, but it's so. And then there's a real thing that you have to do next. When an agent says to you and says, I've got one for you, Dave, you have to follow through. if you then come across, you don't necessarily have to buy it, but you've at least got to be active at that point in time. You can't go to ground and not be contactable for a week. And if it's an absolute mozza, you have to buy it. That being the case, because otherwise, the next time it happens, you won't get the phone call.
You won't get the phone call, yeah.
Because they're going to ring, who they're going to ring? You to start with, who may transact, or they're going to ring me, who they know is going to transact.
I can only assume that, like most other people on earth, they want to make their job as easy as possible.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you want to be the guy that makes it happen. So I know that being a plumber, when we were doing construction work, I could look at a plan in a couple of minutes and know within 5 or 10% what the project is going to be worth. Can you do that as a developer? And what's your 5-minute check that you run over a deal?
I'll break that up into two. The first one, there's only a few variables that you need to get your head around that in a development sense. Mm-hmm. And so if you get these ones right, everything else is a function of these three numbers. The three main numbers. There's the land,
yep.
There's the build,
yep.
And there's the sell price. That's with a permit or with this permitted already approved site. And the fourth one for a non-permitted site is how many dwellings. And the overriding factor on that is time. Time can be your friend in real estate, but if you're paying for the debt on that time with the compound interest, it can be your enemy as well. And
so you're talking about the time it takes to turn around a project?
Yep.
Okay.
So when I decide tomorrow that I want to go, yep, we're going to buy something, how long does it take me to get out the other side?
Yep.
In case. So the land, the build, and the sell price. So if I go to market, and let's say I go to an auction this weekend and the land's worth $1 million, that number's been taken care of already. And let's say it's a site that's got permits already approved for 3 townhouses. Let's just make it real simple.
Yep.
Then I know that my land is $333,000 each. It's a pretty I don't want to. Most people could do that calculation.
No, that's a pretty simple one. I'm with you so far.
And so whether you think something's... Next part is in the build. So it's already got plans approved. How much is it going to cost me to build each of those 3 dwellings?
So do you know that when you originally look at the deal?
Yeah, the experience will tell you what it is. But for people who are getting started doing it, I just say, so go and approach a builder and here's some plans. By and large, what's it going to cost? Is it $200,000 a house? Is it $10,000 a square? Like there's different calculations that builders use. And in the space of a half-hour conversation with someone, you'll figure that information.
You get pretty close.
Yeah. Yep. Now, there are a whole bunch of things that are included, excluded. It doesn't really matter. It depends on which builder you use, the calibre of the fit out, but essentially you're coming to a fixed number.
Yep.
The building is a fairly competitive industry, and so what you're talking, and there'd be someone who'll do it cheaper, but is that what you want as well? So there's a different discussion about time and quality versus the actual price.
Yes.
So I know that if I pay $1 million for this land, I might pay another $1 million for the build. Just it's there, and then I've got all the other stuff. I've got my stamp duty. I've got to demolish the existing house. I want to get working drawings, engineering. I don't know all these other things that need to happen. And I might say my end price is worth $2.4 million. That's what it's going to cost me. It's my total development cost is $2.4 million
to get the.
I'll be the proud new owner of 3 brand new townhouses.
Okay. And then you can put a board up the front. Yeah,
I can sell them.
Yep.
I can sell them beforehand. And I might have needed to sell them beforehand if the bank wants me to have sold them beforehand, but they're worth $2.4 million.
Yep. So
the first thing then it gets to is, what are they worth?
Yep.
Now, hopefully more than $2.4 million.
Yeah. the general idea.
And so you might go, so how do you know what something's worth? Well, you know that you get to look at some plans and you'll say, they're worth this. They're worth $1 million each. I'm being blasé on numbers because every number changes. And you say, so then it comes if you say they're worth $900,000 each, whatever the number is, you're saying I'm prepared to spend 2.4 to try and get 2.7 back. And it's an educated punt then about what is the right parameter and what is the right amount of margin for the risk involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That comes to that. And I realise those numbers, please don't quote me on the numbers because they're just...
Yeah, it's an example. I understand.
So what it all comes down to generally, there's one number. It's the sale price.
I was going to say, because you've got the
land price is taken care of when you put your hand in the air at the auction.
Yeah.
or the guy sitting at your lounge room table and you sign a contract. The build price is a fairly competitive environment. The build will be about what the build is. You'll get degrees of whatever it is. And it'll come back to the sell price.
Yeah.
And so this is where most people then, I think, get themselves caught out because how would I know what the sell price is? Comparable sales. I should go and talk to an agent. Matt, what do you think we can sell them for? Between, and this is, I found this interesting, under $1 million, people have 50 grand ranges.
Okay,
$850 to $900.
Yep.
Over $1 million, it becomes 1 to 1.1. It goes from a 50 grand raise to a 100 grand raise. I don't know why.
which is a big jump in just in the case of a couple of $1,000.
But if I told you then, if I told you it was, you're going to a real estate agent, and real estate agents come back, and you've worked out 900 is where you need to be, and an agent comes back and goes, 850 to 950, he won't do that because that's a $100,000 raise or a $50,000 raise, but he says 850 to 950, what number are you putting in? What number did you hear? Now, there are some people who heard 850.
I hear 850 because you're always want to get a better deal.
There are some people who hear 900, and there are some people who hear 950, and there are some obscure developers, they're the ones you see on a Saturday with just a hand in the air, no idea who they're bidding against, they heard 1.1.
Yeah.
But that number, whatever number you put in, has a fairly big impact on your feasibility and your profitability of the project.
Yes.
So then you come back to, are you looking to do the deal or are you looking to not do the deal? And this is your instant reaction time. And over the years, you get better at making a gut feel going, I know it's $1 million every day of the week. And the agent has just said, 900,000. I know he's wrong. I know that he's, for whatever reason, he has that opinion. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I'll just go off and I know that I'll take his perspective on board, but I know it's a different perspective. So when you asked me before about how I find deals, and I said I want to make sure I can get out of a deal, I'll go to the agents that I deal with and go, well, you're going to be selling this at the end. So there's no point telling me $1 million if it's only worth 900,000 because we're going to have this discussion 6, 8, 12 months down the track anyway.
Yeah.
Where you want to go, actually, Dave, I goofed.
Yeah.
Especially if they're trying to sell me on the land on the way in.
Yes.
Is there. So essentially it was one number. It's the sale price.
Yeah.
And so you need to get very, very good at what is it going to sell for? How do you do that? And the beautiful thing about the real estate market is the information is everywhere. Realestate.com, you can go to the paper on a Sunday, you can ring people up, there's a whole bunch of different subscribe-based information which gives you it. The old-fashioned approach is getting your car on a Saturday and just drive around to auctions and just see what they sell for.
Learn the market.
Yeah. And so there's always something to do because there's always something else happening in the market. And so I could think of other industries, like if you're in the trades industry and you're in the plumbing business, what are other people quoting? Well, there's no real market what people are telling you unless you've got someone who's telling you. You've got to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
The real estate market, it's common knowledge. Because it becomes public information. And you can go to the public information and just stand on the curb on Saturday and listen to what goes on.
And there's an economies of scale that comes into all of this from a point of view of, you stay in the one area, you only got to know one area, but then you can use, I'm guessing, the same builder, tradesman in the same area and kind of move them between projects, which at a guess brings the margin for error further.
Yeah, I don't know if economies of scale is right. I think it's having a team of people. And so if I'm dealing with a builder, one of my questions to the builder is, so what's your workflow like at the moment? So before I buy a project, and I've got, as you saw on the board before, quite a number of projects that are in progress, I already know who's going to build them. Right. Even though I haven't gone out to tender, I know who I'm earmarked to be the builder on that. I already know who the funder is going to be. I know who the real estate agent on the end is going to be. I don't even know who the investor is going to be. They may not know all that themselves, but I've got that earmarked for them. That can change.
But you know what's going on. You can know where your project and what you're trying to do can fit with everybody else.
And so I'm sure they look at me and go, oh, Dave, we know we're going to be selling 5 houses of his this year. We know we're going to be building 2 houses. Whatever they know that's where you become an important part of that being the case.
Do you buy much stuff off market? Because you sort of hear...
Tell me what's off market. Let's have a discussion about, first of all, what is off market.
Off market for someone like... myself, who's I guess not into actively buying every day, is deals you don't hear about.
There's 2 markets.
Yeah.
All right. So I've heard this a lot where people go, off market. And so I once rang up an agent to complain about something, and all I'd done was there was a property over the back fence, and they'd done something, and it was getting sold, and I rang up the agent. Yeah. I'm now on this agent's VIP client list.
Okay.
We never transacted. I rang up to complain about something. And they now send me emails for their off-market opportunities. I'm going, wow. So call me a little bit, puzzled or whatever else. But so we don't have a history. We never transacted. If anything, our relationship was full of angst and anger and conflict. And I'm on their VIP client list for off-market transactions. Me suspects there might be at least one other person on that same list. Just a hunch I've got.
It's an excellent point you make, yeah.
So there's on market, and clearly Saturday afternoon, auctioneering and the bell is on market.
Correct, yeah.
Clearly on market is sale by set date, or this house has got an asking price of $1 million. Whatever, that's clearly on market. Yeah. The off market, there's degrees of off marketness.
Okay.
So when an agent says, we're off market, what it means is they're sending their information via email, not even by a phone call, which don't get me started on, to 500 people they've got on their list.
Instead of posting to realestate.com.au or whatever.
Because their agent or themselves, or their owner or themselves are too lazy, too cheap to put an ad out there. I put to you that the 300 or 500 people on their list was the market anyway who was going to rock up on the Saturday and bid on the thing. It's just a different market.
Yes, understand.
So when I say I buy something off market, I try to buy stuff off mainstream market, or maybe a better way is I prefer to buy it before market or after market.
Right. In terms of the set date where it's meant to transact.
Yep. So, when the agents, and so, I'll get a phone call from an agent that says, we've got one, are you interested? I do get the off market. It's not, you're the only one getting this right now. You've got an inside running because of your history, and I know you'll do it. So it's going to cost us nothing to ask you whether you pay $1 million for this property.
Yep.
Yes, it happens. It's taken me a number of years to get to that point. But then if I say no, or I dilly-dally about it, an email will go out, and I'm copied it on the same email. That goes out, and that's okay. They need to sell this stuff. It's fine. And I say to them, I'm not your only buyer, and you're not my only agent. So, were you respectful of that being the case?
Yep.
That's before market when something's got listed, or alternatively, it goes through the auction or the sale process and hasn't sold, and you buy it after market. When the owners now had their commercial reality or their market expectation, the conditioning process has happened when they go, then it's a better chance to do stuff. So I do get the stuff off market. Typically, a lot of the off market stuff though is an owner directly who has an overinflated opinion of what their property is worth, and doesn't want to pay $10,000 in advertising or $20,000 in commission or something like that. And so, and they become harder to deal with. So a lot of cases, I'm actually happy to deal with an agent because there's someone else who can do a lot of the work. And so, I've bought with owners directly, but it's a lot of, I say it's hit and miss. It's mainly miss because of their unrealistic expectations, and they're emotional about it because it's their house, and I get that. Whereas I'm not emotional about it. It's just a systematic process that ultimately it comes up short. So I go, do you want to buy my house? Probably not. An agent will probably get you a better price for it than I'm going to offer you.
So for you, the agent is almost outsourcing all that dealing with the owner, which you try to outsource everything that you can. So why would you go direct?
I'm not my own law, mate. I'm certainly not knocking on neighbours' houses trying to buy their houses off them.
Yeah, no, fair enough. How many deals come across your desk in relation to the ones that you press go on?
How many deals come across my desk? I will probably, we could pause this right now. We could go online. I could show you 20 or 30 deals right now that are all deals to do.
Oh, really? So there's no shortage of deals out there?
No. So I look at deals continually, even though right now I've just put my checkbook away because I've got a number of things that I need. I've just bitten off a fair bit. I need to actually go and settle that and make sure that's all, and then we'll come up for air again and we'll go and do it again. But I'm not looking at deals because I still need to know what the market is doing.
Okay, so that's a daily thing for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you found the deal you want to do. At some point, you're going to have to put down some money for it.
The old-fashioned approach, yep. Going to write a check.
Where do you come up with the money? What are your strategies on that? Because you have investors, you've already said. You've mentioned the bank a few times. So is it a combination of those two?
Yep. So we'll talk on a bigger picture approach to start with, and then we'll break it down. So the first thing is if I need the total development cost was $2.5 million, the bank is going to provide the most of that, and they're going to want certain conditions and certain parameters around a first mortgage and all the things they want.
Yep.
Doing that, but the bank is the cheapest way of obtaining funds. The problem with the bank is its leverage, and leverage, that people read books on it, and it'll contribute to your growth. It can also contribute to your downfall.
Yeah.
If you can't manage that.
Yep.
The bank also gets nervous about how much money they want to lend you. Having gone through that, where the bank said, actually, Dave, we want you to reduce your debt by half. By 30 days, it'd be really good. You went, it was a real eye-opener for me when I went, yikes. I just can't. Theoretically, you could just keep putting down 20% deposits and borrowing 80% from the bank all day long.
Yeah.
Practically, eventually it gets to someone's desk at the bank because your borrowing gets to a certain level where they go, what does this guy actually do and how does he plan to pay it back? And while the market goes upwards, people go, oh, yeah, great, but there's this day-to-day thing that you have to do. So came across was it was easy for me to use. I had my own pot of capital where I could put down. It was easy for me to use other people's money, and I would syndicate developments. And so what I found was that people were happy to jump into syndicates. They knew they wanted to do it, but they didn't have the expertise or the time, flexibility that allowed them to do it. And for me, I'm leveraging off someone else's balance sheet. So if I need $1 million capital and I come to you and two other people and you've got 300 odd grand each, I can actually create a transaction whereby I'm putting in, a minimal amount of capital to control the entire deal. So I'm happy because I'm in the deal, and my contacts and my colleagues and my tradespeople are getting work, and you're happy because, well, you're in a deal and you get to A, get the financial rewards that come from that, and B, if you spend all this time going, I don't know where they are, I don't know where they are, I don't know where they are, eventually, you get one, you get, I don't know, less grief at home tonight, you get to go to the barbecue on the weekend, and there's a lot of other things. It works in that sense for you. So what I did a number of years ago was I stumbled across it more out of necessity rather than anything that was strategic, and go, this actually works. So for my capital, what do? I put my capital into deals and I multiply my capital the same way I spoke about right at the start, with focusing on, how can I turn 200 into 400 and 400 to 800 and so forth, and I reinvest the proceeds. I need some money to live on, of course, that goes out, and I have investors. So I scale up my business using external investors who want to be passive armchair investor developers.
So it's a combination of
them all.
Both. So you found a block, you've got the money, you've put it down. What comes next? I know that's going to be project specific.
Well, deal specific to a T, but in a real simple sense. If it's got a permit, we'll organise to get the thing started. And the biggest thing you need to do is get finance and get a builder. And so behind the scenes, there's a whole bunch of things that need to happen. So you need to get rid of the house. And so you need to demolish the house, and you need to have the plans drawn up to get the new houses designed, whether down to the type of tiles you're going to put in, down to which builder, from some really, really small stuff to some big stuff. You then go and build it, and then you go and sell it. Or you can keep it as rental, if that's what your business plan entails.
When do you typically sell your stuff? When it's completed, or do you do some stuff off the plan?
I will sell...
So we take that one block and turn it into three, as an example. Keep that same thing.
So the first consideration is, what does your bank want? Because the bank may say, we're only going to give you the money provided you sell before you get started and sell off the plan.
Oh, and will they enforce that on maybe a 1 unit basis, or they do the whole lot, or is it again specific?
Yeah, bank will have credit policy, but the credit policy is open to interpretation, or the credit policy says we suggest or we prefer, or terminology like that. So my preference is, if I'm doing 3 units or less, I don't want to do pre-sales. But for me, it comes down to the reasons why. It's a dollar value thing. So if you're doing one home and you're going to sell a home for $3 million, it's unlikely that someone's going to buy that off the plan. The $3 million buyer says, I'll wait till it's finished. I want to see exactly what it looks like for $3 million.
Fair enough.
If you're selling it for 600 grand houses, people will buy them because they just need to get in the market, and happy to take advantage of what used to be stamp duty. It's still there if owner occupiers in Melbourne, not in Victoria, not investors. So people will, the different pricing points create different markets anyway. So that's the first consideration. The second consideration is the number of dwellings. So if I'm doing 10 units, the bank will want pre-sales. Come to think of it, I probably want pre-sales, because at the end of the time I want to minimise my risk, as we spoke about earlier as well. So I may do a deal where I sign up for finance with no pre-sales, but I still may choose to sell them.
Just to give yourself a little bit extra.
Bird in the hand. I'd rather have the comfort of knowing that, we settled on one yesterday, and it was 14 days from settlement, bang, from completion, certificate of occupancy, there you go. Call in the titles.
Yeah, okay.
And get paid.
Yeah.
Versus you finish and you go, right, haul the furniture in and get a campaign going and wait 30 days on market and see,
it's another 2 or 3 months, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, well, time can go past. In some cases you can go past. Again, as you read on the market and what you think's happening, and what are people actually looking to do. And so before I go and sell anyway, I'm actually targeting a specific buyer. Which buyer am I actually going to target? So then the marketing, when I work with the agent, is actually then targeted towards what buyer are we trying to get, and how are we going to attract them. Whether it be, we've tried a few things. We've done Facebook campaigns, we're in line with realestate.com. But what text are you going to put, and what photo are you going to put online? What's your hook in the water that's going to attract someone? Because If I'm skimming through realestate.com, surely I'm not the only person in the world doing that. Is you're doing exactly the same thing and you're skimming through. So what's going to grab your attention in the headline or the photo or whatever that's going to make that be the case? And the more thought you put into that as a process, I say the better chance you have of success.
What's an example of a hook that you'd use? Like, is it disabled access, for instance, in a townhouse, or is it something like that? Or
Not really. So there are different demographics of buyers, and so you'd find that when it comes down to pricing points. So, for example, we used leading into June 30th and getting rid of stamp duty. We used stamp duty as the hook.
So that was a market specific thing.
And again, the psyche of the buyer is such that they would rather. They would rather pay no stamp duty of 10 grand rather than get 20 grand off the price.
Yeah,
because I got the government. I didn't have to pay them 10 grand.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're working to the market, what they want. What's the biggest project you've done out of interest in terms of dwellings?
Just finishing off a 100-lot subdivision of land.
And that you're subdividing and selling vacant blocks?
So vacant blocks of land. I've got another one where there's 134 blocks of land as well. So two big. As far as townhouse stuff, I've done apartment buildings of 25, but a lot of the stuff, my townhouses now are anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 5 houses, or maybe a different way, they become anywhere from about $5 to $8 million.
Okay, so it's not a cookie cutter specific model, like you're doing a few different models within that buy and split sort of philosophy.
Albeit that's moved over time. I mean, when I first got started, to go and spend $100,000 on a property, albeit it was a rental, was a big deal. Now, 100,000 you spoke about, that's 0.1 when their agent gives you his quoted range. It's 1 to 1.1.
Yeah.
So it's I've evolved as the market evolves, or the market's evolved with me as I've evolved. I don't know whichever way you want to look at it.
Do you have a really favourite part of the process?
Yeah.
What's that?
Getting paid.
Banking the checks.
And we spoke before about being straight down the line. I'm doing this for commercial reality, right? I'm doing this to make money out of property. That's what I'm doing it for. I'm not doing it to solve a housing crisis or to employ a builder I'm doing it to make money out of property.
Right.
And so that I'm really clear on that's what that allows me to do, what allows my family to do, what allows my children to do. And so as a result of that, the best part of the process is when someone says, we just sold 3 houses for you, Dave, and here's the money, and you bank $1 million or $500,000 or $1, it doesn't really matter. That's the best part of the job, and daylight is a distant second.
Do you have an all-time favourite deal?
No, I don't think so. I think the things I take satisfaction from is when I thought it was going to be a certain type of thing, and it was. I specifically targeted a certain way, whether it was the marketing or a specific decision, and it turned out to be the right thing to do.
So it's nice to plan something and then see it through.
You went, yeah, I do actually know a couple of things about this, rather than so any idiot can put their hand in the air and buy a property at auction, and anyone can just employ. When you went, I'm strategically going to go and do something, whatever the something is. I'm going to wait till the end and sell it there. I'm going to target this particular type of the market. I'm going to do that because I want that result. And when that result comes, then you go, maybe I'm not as not as dumb as I think I am after all. Maybe I actually do know a couple of things. That's the satisfactory part of doing that. But the actual the deals as they come through, there's not one that stands out that I went, wow, that was great, because the market changed and people say, could you replicate it? Yeah, I could. But we're talking today, the market 6 months ago was different. Therefore, the market in 6 months' time will be different. So it's a case of how you change through that market and how you then adapt. Yeah. And as I said before, read the tea leaves to go, what am I doing next? Is the bit the bit I take more satisfaction out of, I think.
As Aussies, we love our property, and everyone's an expert to some degree on property. You're nodding, so you're agreeing with that. What's the worst advice you hear about property development?
To a degree, man, I'm probably a bit isolated from it, because I don't know whether people know what I do or people have stopped telling me. The worst advice comes from people who profess to know stuff but actually don't know stuff, and so what I'm reading at the moment is a lot of stuff that's written about housing is going to crash because of house prices are unsustainable, and there's a whole bunch of hysteria that comes about that, and so I actually don't read the articles because they become this, I think eventually, the market will crash.
Yeah.
They've been saying that for about 20 years now as well, what's going on. And so I think the saying is, even a broken clock tells the right time twice a day.
No, absolutely.
That's there. And so typically the markets, what happens to that is as to why I think it's a bit of nonsense is that you need to have an idea about what's going on. But typically it says house prices will crash by 30% or be some headline, hysteria headline that's designed to capture readers' attention. It's generally written by an academic.
Yep.
Just fine. And generally that academic is quoting wage growth rates in comparison to house growth rates. So they'll say
The affordability rate.
Correct. Wages have risen by 5% and houses have risen by 50%. Therefore, the house prices have to come back because wages can't keep up at the same rate. And that's 100% true, provided that house prices are driven by wage growth rates. But they're not. House prices are driven by demand, of which one of the factors is affordability of wages and the like. So when I read that, I get annoyed at people who go, oh, geez, I better not do anything then because, Billy in the daily publication said that it's going to do that. And again, that's the bit you go, really? So is it coming from either an ignorant position or a sterile position or just I'm looking for a controversial position when, you go, really? It's poor advice, so it's not backed up with anything other than academia. And so people live in an academic or a theoretical world. I live in a practical world where you say the market's crashed. So go out on a Saturday and look at the auctions and see where the market's crashed. And you've got people who don't look like they should afford it or people are putting their hands up at big prices. You go, well, that's not their reality. And so there's a saying that perception is reality. And that's your perception, that's okay, but don't let someone else's perception be your perception.
Yeah, that's a great observation, actually, because if you do read the papers at this point in time, that it's all about the crash, or the majority of it is. And then you look around Melbourne, there's a lot of cranes in the air, there's a lot of stuff happening. So the people who are actually doing it are doing it. You can see it.
But you think about what's going to happen. And so people go, I'll wait for the crash. Okay, so let's just wait for the crash. And what does the crash look like? And so first of all, you've got to actually recognise that the crash has just happened. So if you've saved up a $100,000 deposit, just pick a number, and you think that you're going to go and buy a house for half price, you're going to buy that $1 million house for $500,000. I don't think it's going to crash to that extent. And if it does, have you got, quite frankly, the balls that you're going to jump in at that point in time anyway? And let's assume that you have. How are you going to fund the rest of the purchase? Because the bank's going to look at it and go, you're assuming that the bank's come along with you and you've done nothing for however long you've done nothing for, but you've got $100,000, but you reckon you've picked the bottom. And let's assume that $1 million house is now $500,000. You put your $100,000 down, and the bank, can you ask the bank for $400,000? Bank says to you, well, mate, this is crap. We're not lending money at all at the moment. Or they say, how can you provide for the $400,000? Oh, I got a job. What happens if you lose your job? And so there's a thing about be careful what you wish for that says, so people ask me, what do you think about the market? I'm not sure if one of your questions on there, but the market is the market.
Yep.
Your job is to trade within the market, is to recognise the signs of the market and to try and adapt and adjust accordingly. So, yeah, it's great because house prices I used to worry about this or think about this. It would be terrific if the market would crash and I could buy all this stuff and magically it would recover to an all-time high and I could sell it and it would crash 30 days later. You went, the market's the market.
Yep.
My job is to deal with it and to recognise it. So the market for finance will change. The market for construction will change. The market for resales will change. And things like changes to stamp duty or changes to interest rates or changes to lending policy are all changes within that market. So what I do next that counts.
So you have a positive outlook on what the market's going to do, and that's demonstrated by the amount of activity you're currently doing. So the way you see the market at the moment is one of that's going to continue to grow further. Would that be fair observation?
There's a demand for product.
Yep.
And so when I look at when I do a townhouse site, my first question is, will I get my money back? Yes.
Yep.
The answer is yeah, I think it is. All right. The next question is, how much will I make as a return on that money? And then I go through this with investors that I do stuff with, and so. It becomes like an educated punt, if you like. Yep. I'm prepared to risk 100 to make 400. Well, if you've got the 100 to wish to start with, then you are. And if you're not, then don't. It's okay.
Yep.
There's no.
So it comes back to your personal situation and skill set much.
And one of that comes down, dare I say, is risk. About what are the risks that are going to trip me up here that I'm not going to get the return that I want. Well, it could be prices. I think the price is going to crash in 6 months. Sell today. If you think that the lending, there's all these different things that you think can be things that are going to hurt you. So how are you going to counteract them?
Due to the scale of your operation now, do you build those contingencies into your plan?
Yeah,
to a certain degree?
Not necessarily in a mathematically modelled or anything like that, but definitely considered.
Now, you said before you have 4 kids.
Yep.
At what age are they?
They're all school age.
All school age. So are they? Do they show any interest in property? And what do you, if you're tempted to impart any of the knowledge that you do with them just yet?
They have an interest in property. My eldest daughter last night, who's 16, said, "Dad, I found a house." And I live in Glen Iris, in the suburb of Melbourne, and she goes, "House in Glen Iris. I love this house. It's like a Hamptons-y sort of thing on the market."
Right.
I said, "What's the address?" She said, "I don't know." So I look it up. She's found the most expensive house in Glen Iris.
So your kids are in the property.
Fantastic. So we had this. And so what then leads to is a conversation about how you're going to afford this, or what are your goals, or that type of stuff. What I've tried to teach my kids through all this is there's a few. They come to business meetings with me, and they come on job sites, and they've attended with real estate agents, and they see what Dad does.
Okay.
And they've seen that their entire lives, what Dad does. So it's normal, or as normal as it can be. Some way, if your dad worked in a factory or worked as an accountant, it's normal. That's their norm. What I've tried to teach them over the journey through this is there's a few functions, regardless of whatever choice they take as a career in life, that they need to be. There are key success factors that differentiate between the successful and the not so successful. The number one I come back to is decisiveness.
Ability to make a decision.
Correct. So I will say, "Matt, don't have splinters in your bum." "What do you mean, Dad?" "You're sitting on a fence, mate. You get splinters in your bum. You got to make a decision. You in or you're out. I don't care what you want. You want to go to the footy? I'm not sure, mate. It's a yes or a no answer. It's not a..." And so then it's teaching them that if they want to go to the footy, they don't like it, we can always leave.
So you can change the decision later, but don't be afraid to make one.
And then it's the first part. And the other one is then encourage them to say yes. Things happen when you say yes. "Do you want to do this deal, Dave?" "Yes." "Well, Dave, do you want to do this interview, Matt?" "Yes."
Yes, thankfully.
Things that happen with saying yes. Now, it's not just you become a yes man, but things happen when you say yes, and be decisive.
And with you taking them to meetings on job sites and that sort of thing, is that so they can see an example of that, so you can set the example? Like, is that something you've thought out, or is it
practical reality, mate? I need to go to a real estate agent. I'm looking after 2 kids at home,
so they come with you.
They're coming with me.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I didn't know whether that was a planned out thing or it just worked out that way.
A few times, all right, who wants to go to... Yeah, and my youngest has demonstrated a desire to get involved, so I'll have him watering gardens on, when we're about to hand over and that sort of stuff, and I'll pay him a couple of dollars for doing it, and I've made him report money and that sort of stuff that's there. But it's, what I've done, I've got where I am from a fairly unique set of circumstances that I don't know is necessarily replicatable by them, because their circumstances is different, but there are certain bunch of criteria or skill sets or things that I have, attributes that I have, that I think definitely should get. They should want to copy, because that's, they will become successful, because there's the smarter kids. They had more opportunities than I had as a kid, because that's what next generation is better than the last.
Exactly,
and so I'm trying to give, what do I want to leave them as the legacy that goes through that.
Is there anything you do outside of, you said you're a runner before?
Yeah.
Is there anything that maybe that's part of it, maybe it isn't, that you do outside of your property developing work that you feel has allowed you to be successful in what you do day to day? Is there an exercise, a diet component, anything like that?
I exercise every day. I exercise in the morning, because I think it makes me alert. And this started off like when I first started working, or maybe a few years when, definitely when I first met Steve, we were in business together. Before we started working at the same firm, that the first thing you do is exercise. No matter how bad your day is, you've actually started the day on a good.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
yeah, 100%.
I played sport when I was growing up, and so now for me running is a big thing. Because I couldn't play the sport because of the time commitments with kids and the like, so I started running, and so that was a thing there. It gives me a great chance to clear the mind. Gives me a great chance to think about things, and then there's a lot of similarities between. I run marathons. So there's a lot of similarities between running marathons and setting a plan, achieving a goal, all that sort of stuff that comes through that as well. The feeling at the end of achieving something.
I've done a bit of cycling in my time, and that endurance aspect of exercise is just the time that it takes means you've got a lot of thinking time, which can work for you if you learn to train yourself to think in the right way when you're in that environment.
Well, it does, and then you also then go. For me, it's a step further because every marathon I've ever run, you always hit the wall, and so you're actually training yourself in the marathon to actually try and make decisions, smart decisions, whilst being fatigued. So you have to become decisive about. Am I taking a drink at this drink station or whatever I'm doing, which is the same like in a business sense where I go, I have to make a decision today. I can't revert it to anyone else. The decision is right now. What am I going to do?
Yeah, because in business and I suppose in life too, it's often not what you can do in the ideal circumstances, is it? Because those ideal circumstances don't come around very often. It's what you can do when you're under pressure, when your back's against the wall, when things don't work out. That's probably going to have a bigger determinant on where you end up at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So I'll bring it back to I've done a bunch of marathons. I've never had a perfect marathon. There's always been something that's gone wrong. So in a deal sense, I've never had a perfect development deal. There's always been elements that have gone wrong. It's how you cope with that and how you get around that and go through that determines your success.
So what do you do if someone rings you up, Dave, we've found that this has fallen over, or we've found dinosaur bones on the side, or whatever, I don't know what it is. How do you process that? Is that disaster? Do you build that into contingency? Do you expect that?
If we were to do a deal together and you were going to invest in one of my projects tomorrow, the first thing I would tell you is this is the feasibility. These are the numbers that I expect them to be. There's only one certainty behind this. This won't be the end result. The number will be either higher than this or lower than this. It's unlikely it's going to come in exactly to that number. So if it comes, so that can be a function of a whole bunch of events.
Yes.
Through that process. So by nature I become eternally optimistic about stuff, and by nature you become a problem solver about things. So there's always going to be a problem, and I can guarantee you that this project we do together, mate, there'll be a problem through it.
Yep.
All I know is that I'm going to solve the problem. Now, so the problem may be solved. It may need money to solve the problem. It may need skill sets or something. So I'll solve the problem, and I'll tell you that I've solved the problem, and then tell you how I'm going to solve the problem.
You back yourself to solve that.
That is the case. And so, if we found dinosaur bones, well, how do we get dinosaur bones? Maybe we're not building townhouses. Maybe we've got a dinosaur exhibit. I don't know. There's whatever it becomes at that point in time is you will then. It lends itself to actually test yourself and keep your muscle memory alive to say, how am I going to do this?
You find out what you're really made of in some of those.
Absolutely. And that's
situations.
Marathon does that. It strips you bare and leaves you out completely exposed with you against the road. So in a way, those days, they're good days. And I think that every deal you ever did always went to plan, it'd sort of be pretty boring. And then I say, but it was really, really simple. And all you had to do was buy a property, engage a builder, and then sell it. And you made $1 bazillion. Do you reckon anyone would be a builder? They'd all be doing what I do. So you actually want it to be harder and you want it to be tougher. Well, sometimes, don't get me wrong, some days you go, really? Not today. You're kidding me. But by and large, because it's actually a barrier to entry.
Yeah, exactly right. If it's too easy, everyone does it and the margins go out of it. It's just business. A couple more questions, Dave, and we'll wrap up. If you could click your fingers and have it all done, 10 years' time, where do you sit?
Hopefully I've known when to pull back, when to.
Interesting. Yeah.
As I'm 47, and when I go, okay, you don't need to take as big a positions, or what are you doing it for? Or are you commercial? And that transition in the end game, I've got the timing, and I've started to listen to that and become better at doing that. So not quite putting the slippers on and smoking a pipe, but people say, "Oh, what are you going to do when you're going to retire?" I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll retire tomorrow." What do you do? I'll probably just do the property thing. It's the same. So but how big do you want it to be, and what do you want to do? That sort of stuff.
And the role you take within it, and what sort of stuff. If you could have one law changed, what would it be?
A no dickhead policy.
And how exactly would you enforce that?
I'm in charge of it.
That makes things simple, I suppose, in a lot of ways, doesn't it?
They put laws in place. I think a lot of laws are written to reward mediocrity or to try and make things good for it's there. And you look at other societies around the world and who don't have such laws, and you wonder whether we're the lucky country because of that, or we were better if we didn't have that. Having said that, there are laws needed to protect people. there are elements of society to it. So right now, if you ask me today, my sense right now is there are people in society that are very, extremely vulnerable and that don't get protected, and there are laws in place that should protect people and don't.
Yeah.
And that's so, things like, I know you wanted me to say something about stamp duty or land tax or income tax. I'm not that worried about that. That's just all a variable of interest rates and that there. I'm more worried that I work and I contribute to taxes to a society, yet I look around and there are people within society who have fallen through cracks, and yet government departments seem to be just pointing at another government department to help them out. And that's the bit that gets me. In a business sense, my no dickhead policy stands that if you did something you didn't know what you're doing, then you wear the consequence of doing that. But there are people who don't know that, who are vulnerable in society. I'm talking to people who are with big disabilities, or whether it be falling through cracks below bread lines, poverty lines, that sort of stuff, that should get helped and aren't.
And is that an observation that you just see around?
Just see stuff where a lot of government departments. I think government departments is the largest single employer. I'll stand corrected if it's not. Government itself is the largest employer group. A lot of it smacks of butt covering versus actual productivity, and as a result, there's a consequence. And so there's some consequences it just affects me. Big deal. It's I get by that. It's still frustrating, but the consequence for people who can't defend themselves, or don't have the wherewithal to defend themselves, and that's the bit that I would change.
Right.
I don't know how I would change it, but that's what I want to change.
I understand what you're saying. It's a good observation, and it's amazing how many people who we would look at being what we would quote typically successful, like yourself, out there developing property and that sort of thing, to whatever degree it is, actually take quite a big and wide view of society and can see those things. I think that's really an interesting point, because rather than get stuck right in what you're doing, to be able to open your eyes a little bit, I think it's important. Do you have any books or documentaries you can recommend? Are you a reader?
I say I am, but I haven't really. I've got a short attention span too, so if it doesn't grab me real quick, I'm out.
Yeah.
in that sense. So, if I was reading books, I read biographies of successful people and find out what their what made them, and whether it be certain points in their life or certain characteristics and character traits that they have that you went, that's why they are successful. That's what I would typically try and do.
Does any come to mind as a...
There's a fellow in England, a guy called Alan Sugar.
All right.
Electronics guy, ended up buying a football club and all and so he was a wheeler and dealer from a very young age, and he's a wheeler and dealer now, and he's become, I guess, a bigger person or a better person as a result of all that sort of stuff. So I will reread his. I'll probably read Frank Lowy.
Oh yeah.
Getting how he got started, and that notion, and is it from a property sense as well.
Any parting words, requests, anything you want to say before we wrap this up?
Wow. This is where I'm supposed to give you something really philosophically and it's there.
Now's your chance, Dave, and we're all ears. So.
No, I think, when my 10-year-old gets out of the car every morning when I drop him at school, so be the best you can be. That's probably right now what I'd say is that everyone has it. They don't have to be, it's almost be the best you that you can be. So don't be the best. You don't want to be a replicatable Dave or a replicatable Matt. You want to be the best you.
The best that you can be. Sound advice. Now, if someone wants to, do you want people to track you down or not?
I'm very good at getting people off the phone if I don't want to speak to them. I enforce my no dickhead policy, so by all means, a person can get in contact with me. I've got a website which will have contact details, www.bradleypropertygroup.com.au. By all means, you can get in contact with me through that. If you've liked this, you want to say, hey, I really appreciate it, a couple of things resonated. Or you can say, I voted you with the no dickhead policy, it's fine as well. So by all means, give me some feedback. I'll respond to people if it's deserving of a response. If it's not, then I won't. But it's life's for living and life's for meeting people. So go and do something, challenge yourself, go and experience something, and give it a crack.
Awesome. Cheers, Dave. Thanks for doing this, carving out a little bit of your day, and I'm going to let you get back to your whiteboard full of stuff that needs to get done.
I make more money getting out on the job site, so I'm about to go out and just drive around and look at stuff.
As am I.
Terrific.
Cheers,
Thanks,
mate. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. It's Matt again. Thanks for listening. Just a couple of things before you guys clock off. You can get all Trench Talk episodes at xrm.com.au/podcast. You can also sign up for other goodies at the same site. Just plonk your email in there and you are covered. That's X for X-ray, R for Romeo, M for Mike.com.au/podcast. If you really like what I'm bringing you, please head to iTunes, subscribe to this show, and leave a review right there. And lastly, if you want to contact me directly, type the @ symbol followed by Mr. Matt Reynolds into your search bar and you'll find all the social links. Goodbye.